Welcome to the Future Strong podcast. Today we're looking at a book that honestly feels more relevant now than ever, even though it was written decades ago. It's Neil Postman's Amusing Ourselves to Death, Public Discourse in the Age of Show Business. Postman asked this really chilling question about society's future. He famously contrasted two dystopian visions, George Orwell's 1984 and Aldous Huxley's Brave New World. And while, many of us focused on Orwell, the external oppression, the censorship postman argued that actually Huxley's vision was the one we should really be watching out for.
Yeah, and what's so fascinating is how Postman broke down that difference. Orwell, he said, feared those who'd ban books, hide information where truth would be, actively concealed, control through pain. But Huxley, he feared a world where nobody would even want to read a book, where we'd just be flooded with so much information, so much stuff that would become passive, kind of self-absorbed. And truth wouldn't be banned. It'd just get lost, drowned in a, quote, sea of irrelevance. So Orwell feared what we hate might ruin us. Huxley feared what we love would.
Exactly. And our mission today really is to unpack Postman's arguments, which, remember, were originally aimed right at the television age, and see how deeply they seem to echo in our current digital social media world. What does it all actually mean for how we get our information, how we talk to each other, how we even understand what's true anymore? Postman's core idea, and he was pretty blunt about it, was that Huxley, not Orwell, was basically right. He didn't think we'd be taken over by some, external boot stamping on a face forever. It would be our own, our infinite appetite for distractions, and our love for technologies that, as he put it, kind of undo our capacities to think.
Right. And if you connect that to the bigger picture he was painting, Postman saw how television didn't just have entertainment on there. It actually started transforming everything into entertainment. So it wasn't just about the fun shows. It was that entertainment became the natural format for the representation of all experience. News, politics, religion, education.
Yeah.
Everything started fitting that mold. And that fundamentally changed public conversation.
Yeah, he described it vividly, like Americans stopped swapping ideas and started swapping images. Arguments weren't really about logic or propositions anymore, but about, quote, good looks, celebrities, and commercials. He said serious public discussion turned into a kind of baby talk, and public affairs became like a vaudeville act. The risk, he warned, and this is pretty stark, was culture death. It really makes you stop and think, especially now.
And that brings up a really crucial point he made about what it even means to be informed. Postman coined this term disinformation, which isn't, simply false information like lies. It's more subtle. He called it misleading information, misplaced, irrelevant, fragmented, or superficial, stuff that gives you the illusion of knowing something, but actually leads you away from real understanding. And he argued that when news gets packaged primarily as entertainment, well, that's the inevitable result. It's that gap between just knowing facts and truly getting it. He asked this really powerful question. Ignorance is always correctable, but what shall we do if we take ignorance to be knowledge?
It's actually quite unsettling how these ideas from, the mid-'80s? Before the internet as we know it, before social media, how they feel like they could have been written yesterday. I mean, that sea of irrelevance Postman talked about, doesn't that sound exactly like scrolling through our feeds? Just this constant barrage of fragmented bits and pieces.
Absolutely. That idea of news becoming inert, something Postman saw was TV news. It gives us something to talk about, but
yeah,
it doesn't lead to any meaningful action. That's just amplified massively with the endless scroll, right?
Huh.
We consume information so fast, often totally out of context, without any depth. So we get this feeling of being informed, but maybe without the real understanding, the actual grasp of the issues.
And think about that infinite appetite for distractions. Social media platforms seem almost perfectly engineered to feed exactly that appetite, don't they? They really are the ultimate pleasure machines Postman warned about, controlling us not through inflicting pain, but just by keeping us constantly amused, constantly engaged, fulfilling our desires rather than, say, challenging our thoughts.
Mm-hmm. And this also really shapes how we see ourselves and others, particularly through advertising. Postman had this very sharp observation. He said TV commercials weren't really selling the product itself, but selling something about the character of the consumers of products. He argued advertisers wanted to know not what is right about the product, but what is wrong about the buyer. So the focus shifts away from rational choice, from whether the product's actually good, towards pure emotional appeal. He said the truth or falsity of an advertiser's claim becomes basically not an issue. It's about tapping into identity, anxiety, desire.
Yeah, and here's where I think it gets really insightful for today. Postman warned that assuming technology is always a friend to culture is just stupidity, plain and simple. Because, he argued, every technology brings with it a hidden program for social change. It changes how we relate to each other, how we think. And now, in the digital age, we see that so clearly with algorithms, personalized feeds. They're constantly, subtly reinforcing what we already like, what we already want to see, building these bubbles of amusement.
Right. And his idea of public discourse just dissolving into giggles or being drained by laughter. It feels disturbingly familiar when you look at a lot of online political discussion, doesn't it? It often breaks down into memes, quick sound bites, performative outrage, rather than, actual sustained logical debate. Postman actually asked, what is the antidote to a culture's being drained by laughter? He didn't exactly give an easy answer, but his whole book kind of points towards needing to reclaim literacy, focus, attention span, demanding substance.
So, what's the takeaway for us now? Postman's Amusing Ourselves to Death really does hold up a powerful mirror. It shows how deeply the tools we use for communication actually shape our culture, our thinking, even our idea of what's real. He wasn't saying entertainment is inherently bad, but the problems start, he said, when we try to live in the sort of castles in the air that entertainment builds for us. It's a bit chilling to think that the very things we often seek out, convenience, fun, constant connection, could be the things that, in his view, might be leading us astray.
And that really leaves a crucial question for you, the listener, doesn't it? In this digital world, overflowing with information that's so often dressed up as entertainment, how do we actually tell the difference between real knowledge and that disinformation Postman warned about? How do we cultivate that kind of serious mental readiness, that critical thinking, he argued, was so vital, especially when our almost infinite appetite for distractions is being catered to 24/7. It's a genuine challenge to stay, truly well-informed when that line between news and, vaudeville seems to get blurrier all the time.
Ultimately, it leaves us to ponder. Are we consciously choosing how we engage with the information shaping our world? Or are we maybe, just as Postman chillingly predicted, amusing ourselves to death?